I've got a song for you. Ready? Let's talk about resentment. Let's talk about resentment. Let's talk about all the ways we use it to deny our power. Let's talk about resentment. Ooh, yeah. What do you think? It could be in the top 40. Yeah. Okay. Maybe not the song, but this flavor and experience of resentment is definitely one of those top 5 flavors that I am very familiar with. And if you struggled with resentment yourself, off and on throughout your life, all throughout your life, or especially dealing with it right now, I just want to let you know I see you. I get what a pain in the ass it is. Been there, done that, worn that t shirt. Even recently got to see where I was still falling into that trap of resentment and then make it even worse by judging myself and judging the other people involved. And so I facilitated myself through a process of letting go of the judgment, really looking at the resentment, really getting honest with myself, and experiencing a release from it in a way that just tapped me into so much more energy and awareness and possibility. So that's what I want to share with you today. And yet it can really help to look at where some common myths or interesting points of views about reaction come from, which can keep us stuck in it and feeling really disempowered. Check this out. This definition of resentment comes from WebMD. A person experiencing resentment will often feel a complex variety of emotions that include anger, disappointment, bitterness, and hard feelings. Resentment is commonly triggered by relationships with people who insist on being right all the time and being taken advantage of by another. Now, so we're done with the MD definition. Now, I found this really interesting because you'll notice that everything about this definition is pointing the finger of blame, of fault at other people. So it's saying basically, your resentment's not your fault. It has to do with other people. And it's like, yeah, I'm feeling resentful because they have to be right all the time. It's their fault. I'm feeling resentful because they're taking advantage of me. It's their fault. But when we take on this definition of resentment, we are completely taking any responsibility about this from ourselves. We're putting it all on other people. It's basically saying resentment is normal. It's a result of other people and you just got to deal with it. But that doesn't work for me. Does it work for you? I'm all about let's use these emotions, these contracted states of being, these reactions as a signpost to wake up, pay attention, get really present to what we're choosing. And then when we're willing to take responsibility, we can see that as a doorway and walk through that doorway into different possibilities. And that's really what I'm excited to share with you today. And so it's possible when we're willing to take responsibility. So, a great way to, as you're listening to today's episode, to make it really relevant for yourself is to take a moment right now and consider, is there something right now that you're feeling resentful about? Or is there something in the recent past? Or is there something that you've been feeling resentful for years, if not decades? And it's just you and me here. So you get to be really honest with yourself. And this is about brave living and having this intimacy with yourself to really get honest. And here's one of the big keys to breaking out of the hold that resentment can have on you. One of the first steps is to let go of judging yourself and let go of judging these other people. Okay. So, again, this is a safe space where you get to explore this with curiosity and with compassion. So, you willing to let go of the judgment? Let that melt. And then as we move forward into the rest of this episode, see what golden nuggets are here for you. Because I trust you're listening to this at this moment in time. Something called you here. So I honor you for following that calling. And something also tells me that if you're listening to this right now, you're ready to let go of the resentment. Maybe you've been holding it as a righteous badge of honor, like I did for a while, and I'll tell you about that in a few moments. Maybe it's just been what you've known, and it's okay. You're not alone in that. Yet, let's explore what else is possible here, okay? So, I'm going to share with you now an article that I wrote once. And these episodes in season 3 of my podcast are going to be a total blend of sometimes you're going to be able to join me live and it's going to be in the moment sharing. Sometimes you're going to have a pre-recorded video that you're watching or audio that you're listening to where I'm just riffing on any given topic. Sometimes I'm reading an article that I wrote because I just got it all so dialed in that it helps me stay on track to read the article to you. So if you're listening to the podcast, you might not even notice a difference. If you're watching the episode on YouTube, you might notice. And yet I'm okay with that. And I'm just going to let you know, I'm reading an article right now that is actually, it was published in the Elephant Journal in 2016. And yet, as I've been rereading this, it really has this timeless wisdom. And at the time that I wrote this, it was an editor's pick. And since then, it's had thousands of views. And I wanted to share with you this article, The Truth About Resentment and 6 Steps to Prevent It. And I'll drop the link to the Elephant Journal article in the show notes so you can check that out. So here we go. For the longest time, I viewed my resentment as a product of other people's behavior. For decades, I put other people's needs above my own, and I could feel their tug. We've all felt them in some form. Perhaps it's our child literally tugging on our shirt, asking for attention, or our partner energetically pulling at us to do something, or a client filled with urgency to get that project done yesterday. Sometimes it's all of these tugs at once. It can be overwhelming. I mistakenly thought that because I could feel other people's tugs, I had to do something about them immediately. So I would reach out to console, comfort, and meet their expectations. I thought that by taking care of others first, I would have more space to relax and focus on me. But that was the fantasy, not the reality. Those tugs were ever present and kept my attention on others, kept my attention outside of myself, ignoring the resentment building up, begging me to choose something else. At the time, though, I was unaware that I could choose something else. The something else being me. Back then, I didn't know the truth about resentment. I viewed it as a sign that I was right and other people were wrong. I held on to my resentment with a righteous attitude, like a badge of honor. See how much I've given to others. See how good I am by taking care of everyone else. My resentment fueled a sense of martyred anger. I blamed others for being needy and demanding. I began to view relationships in all their many forms as obligations that drained me. So I pulled away and swung to the other extreme, putting my own needs and desires first. I went so far as to exclude others from my world. I thought if I spent more time alone, I could change this pattern of losing myself in others' needs. This wasn't the answer either, but it did give me distance from the pattern, which allowed me to gain a new perspective on resentment. I saw how resentment was a signal. Resentment was letting me know that I had crossed my own boundaries. I had said no when I meant yes. And I said yes when I meant no. I had ignored my own inner voice, my guide to knowing what I truly desired. It took practice and patience to slow down and tune into my inner voice so I could hear my own yes and hear my own no. And the more I listened, heard, and acted on those desires, the more I trusted myself. Now I'm able to choose how to respond based on consideration for everyone involved in the situation. I see how it's a both and in relationship, not an either or. I'm not putting my desires over others, and I'm not putting others' desires over mine. I'm discovering how this creates possibility and greater intimacy rather than resentment, which can lead to limitation and separation when we don't see it for what it is. So here are 6 steps that helped me receive the gift of resentment and transform my others first pattern. These steps helped me step into a space of curiosity so that when I did perceive a tug or many tugs, I could slow down and respond rather than react. So here are those 6 steps. Step 1, when you become aware of a tug, notice the sensations in your body. Honor your body for sharing this awareness with you. You are aware of someone else's need, desire, or expectation. That's amazing. You don't have to do anything about it yet, though. Just notice the sensations in your body. And then step 2, acknowledge silently or out loud the people who are tugging. They desire something from you because of who you are. Honor them for reaching out to you for support. And this might look like you're sitting at home, maybe you're like me, you're an entrepreneur, you work from home at your, computer, and all of a sudden you become aware of this sense of urgency from that client of yours. And they're in the midst of a launch or a project that has a really time-sensitive timeline, and you can begin to perceive their anxiety. Now, the importance of these 2 steps is that, and this is me riffing off the article right now, the importance of these 2 steps is this really helps you begin to acknowledge how aware you are. You may think, well, that's crazy. I'm like thousands of miles away from my client. They're in another state or another country. How could I possibly be aware of them? Here's the deal, though. You're probably way more psychic than you have been giving yourself credit for. And what we can do when we're not acknowledging how aware we are of other people, we can begin to feel that anxiety as if it's our own anxiety and react to that anxiety. And our way to attempt to lessen the anxiety is to finish that project right now, even though you haven't eaten lunch and you promised you were going to take your kid out to feed the ducks, or you promised yourself you were going to eat your food and then go prioritize another project, or you're going to get outside and take that walk. And so instead of doing those other things that you may have committed to yourself or to others, you may, to try to lessen that anxiety, just plow forward, ignore your hunger, ignore your other commitments, and just get that project done because you're telling yourself you feel anxious about it. Now, sometimes it is our own anxiety. A lot of times, though, it can be that other person's anxiety and sense of urgency. But until you slow down to tune in to what are you actually aware of here? What are those sensations in your body? You can just plow forward unconsciously. So that's why in these steps, it's helping you slow down and get present. So notice the tug, notice the sensations in your body, honor your body for sharing this awareness with you. And then step 2, acknowledge the person who's tugging. So what that could look like is, say you're sitting at your desk, you become present to this anxiety, and you can sense that this client is like tugging at you. When is she gonna get that thing done? When are they gonna get that thing done? You can be like, okay, Nellie, I'm aware of you. I know this is important to you. And just having that vocal acknowledgement can help you begin to lessen that feeling that it's your anxiety. Or say it's a partner or a child or someone, an employee or an employer, like in your space, who are tugging at you for your attention, like hands up, like, hey, come talk to me, or they're pulling on your literal clothing. Again, just acknowledge the tug, become aware of it inside yourself. Notice the sensations that you're having in your body. Maybe you experience this tension along your, upper back in between your shoulder blades. Maybe you experience this beginning of a headache. Maybe you begin to feel this like pain in your right arm. Whatever it is, just notice those sensations. And then again, acknowledge, like, if there are people in your space, you might be like, oh my gosh, it's my kiddo, or oh, it's my partner, or oh, it's my employee for the 10th time today. Like, whatever it is, just acknowledge that they're reaching out to you because you've got some value to them. You've got some gift, you've got some strength, you've got something that they're desiring. So just acknowledge this. And this also helps to melt the judgment and just bring forth some appreciations and acknowledgments. If not appreciation, just acknowledgments of what is. Now, step number 3, recognize this is huge. You do not need to do anything with this awareness or this energy right now. Under most circumstances, you do not need to act in this moment. And this right here is helping create a pattern interrupt, whereas before you might have just plowed ahead to take care of that project, even though it was totally going beyond your boundary, or plow ahead and tend to that kid or that partner or that person's needs over your own. By pausing and reminding yourself, you don't need to do anything about this right now, you're beginning to really tap into more of your power and your agency and really your authority in this moment to have more choice over how you would like to respond rather than react. Step 4, breathe. Take several deep breaths. Expand your energy to fill the room so that instead of collapsing, sometimes what can happen in step 1, when you're noticing those sensations of someone's tug at you, what can happen is there's this energetic collapse and there's a contraction, and the physical sensations are like, like, or, arg. So there's this contraction. So by breathing and taking these expansive breaths and expanding your space, your energy to fill the room that you're in. And you don't overthink it. Just like imagine you're like whew, unfurling yourself beyond this tight straight jacket of constriction, and just play with how expansive you can be with your own energy, and notice right there what that shifts. Now, step 5, check in with yourself by asking these questions. 1, what needs and desires do I have? Question 2, what would serve me the most in this moment? Question 3, what would contribute the most to the lives of others and myself right now? And question 4, what action can I take to create the most for everyone involved? So let's look at this. Let me give you an example of this. So let's say I'm sitting at my desk, I'm all of a sudden aware of like this strong sense of anxiety and urgency from one of my clients. Let's call her Nellie. I don't have any clients named Nellie. And I perceive this anxiety and urgency to get this project done now because it's a launch. So I ask myself, I'm breathing and I ask myself, what needs and desires do I have? Like right now, I may tune in to my body. Well, I'm hungry. I haven't had lunch. And the last thing I ate was a banana for breakfast several hours ago. I'm starving. So I need to feed myself, my body. I need to bring my blood sugar up. That's one need. Also, I look at my calendar. Oh, I actually have a call coming up in 30 minutes that I need to prepare for so I can help that client and make the most out of that session. So I need to eat and take care of my body, and I need to prepare for this next client call. So question 2, what would serve me the most in this moment? Well, I need to eat and I need to prepare. Like I've got those two things coming up over the next 30 minutes. What would serve me the most is to take care of my body hunger and set up myself up for success and my client for the next call. Question 3, what would contribute the most to the lives of others and myself right now? Well, I kind of already answered that with question 2. I got to feed my body because I'm not any good if I don't eat food right now. I'm going to get hangry. I'm going to start to get foggy minds. Like I'm not going to be present with my next client. I'm not going to be present for the client who has this urgent deadline. So I got to eat, and then I got to prep for this client because that's going to help us make the most out of this. Now, what about Nellie though? So what would contribute the most to the lives of others and myself right now? Well, I'm not able to do everything for everyone right now. And I got to include myself in this. So when I look at question 4, what action can I take to create the most for everyone involved? 1, get myself some food. 2, once I've done that, prepare for this next client call. And then 3, another action I could take that would contribute to Nellie would be to reach out. Maybe I could reach out and send her a text or an email, via email or Slack or Basecamp or whatever it is that I'm using with Nellie, and be like, hey, I just want you to know I am tracking this timeline. I am XYZ, I'm 50% through with that project, and I'm going to get the next iteration of it to you tomorrow by 9 a.m. You can be on the lookout for it then, or whatever the details are. This way, I'm communicating to them and I'm inviting them to have a bit more ease, knowing that I got you. I'm on top of this. I'm not going to get it to you in the next 30 minutes, but I'm tracking it and I'm on target with this. So here's when it's coming your way. Stay tuned. So see how by taking a few deep breaths and taking these steps and checking in with these questions, I didn't bypass myself. I'm also setting myself up for success, both physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially with my business, by tending to my clients in ways that didn't exclude myself from the conversation, nor did it exclude them. So sometimes what we can do is come and, make the mistake of not only do we exclude ourselves, we might exclude others by pushing them away. Like, I don't want to feel your anxiety, get away. I don't want to deal with this right now. But that just creates this invisible wall and an energetic that what happens when you push away a needy child? Often they become even needier. And so it creates this power struggle, which doesn't serve anyone. So this is an example of how, instead of pushing against that need from another, it's just like, hey, I know we've got this thing coming up. I've got you. It's all taken care of. It took 1 minute, and I would have eaten first though, before sending that, just to make sure I'm prioritizing myself and including my body and myself in these conversations. So those were some of the questions for step 5 to help you not only prevent, well, this is about avoiding resentment, building this moment. Now, step 6 is choosing which actions you wish to take or not, based on consideration for yourself and others. So those last few questions really help you think through that step by step. And then step 6 is now actually choose those actions. So by slowing down and tuning into our bodies in this way, we tap into a greater awareness of what is occurring internally. When we do this, we're less apt to fall into our default reactions and more likely to act from a place of clear consideration for everyone involved. This cultivates greater trust and intimacy with both ourselves, with others, and ourselves. So please remember, Nobody's tug is more important than or more powerful than you. So don't leave yourself out of your choices or your life. That is the surefire path to resentment and dissatisfaction. But when you recognize that you are the most powerful and the most important ingredient of your life, that sets you up for success on your terms and the fulfillment and the real agency, the real sense of authority that comes when you're basically authoring your life and including yourself in it. So there you have it. The 6 steps to prevent resentment. And I'm going to add in a few other things to this too. One of the ways that you can prevent, this is part 2, one of the ways that you can prevent resentment is to get really honest with yourself. So instead of saying yes when you mean no, and no when you mean yes, which is a complete crossing of the wires, uncross the wires. Say yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no. Because when you're doing the opposite, AKA people pleasing, and one of my upcoming episodes is going to be all about people pleasing and how to break out of that habit. When you're crossing the wires, that is a setup for resentment. Uncrossing the wires requires you to let go of the people pleasing, and yet it's one of the best ways to avoid even being resentful because you're not crossing your own boundaries. So my desire is that this conversation has stirred up some things in your world to help you have some different perspectives on resentment and see what you can do in really tangible ways starting today to use resentment as a doorway into greater personal responsibility, authority, and power. And if you'd like to continue this conversation with community, come on and join our private Facebook group, the Live Your Yes community, and dive in there for rich conversations. And if I can be of support to you, if resentment and people pleasing and crossing your own boundaries and not including yourself in your life is really starting to drag you down and create a whole bunch of crap that you're just ready to change, reach out. There's a link in the show notes about how you can get on a call with me. Check that out. I am here to support you in having the truth of you, the freedom of you, the power of you, and being free of resentment. Now, here's one important thing. So check that out if that calls to you. And here's one more thing to keep in mind as you move forward from here. Just like with my last series about brave women, brave living, where I talked about being brave is not about being fearless. We discover our bravery and how brave we are when we experience fear. Because if you're going through life trying to completely avoid fear, then you're judging yourself when you're feeling afraid and getting locked into it instead of having the freedom of being like, oh, okay, I'm feeling afraid right now. Can we be with our fear and now summon our brave to do that thing that's triggering the fear, right? Like that's having the whole human experience. We don't need to cut out fear. We also don't need to live in it all the time. So just like that, that applies here with resentment. I mean, I don't want to live in resentment ever. However, if I set this target for myself to live a resentment-free life, when I notice I'm feeling resentful, the default mechanism may be to go into judgment. Oh, damn it, I'm feeling that resentment, and I said I was going to be a resentment-free life. Like the judgment creates this straitjacket around it and stops us from having choice and agency. So use what I shared with you today to play with resentment. Remember the song that I sang. You can even do that when you're noticing you're feeling resentment. Let's talk about resentment. Oh, let's talk resentment. Yay. Let's talk about all the ways I'm using it to deflate my power, to deny my power. use the song, use what it takes to create that pattern interrupt, to break out of that default unconscious mode of resentment and judgment. Let go of the judgment, bring in some curiosity, bring in some compassion. Use what I've shared with you today to unpack this, to break free from this, and recognize that the more you put these steps into action, the more you allow this to be a practice, the more you're going to get to a space and place where you may notice a twinge of resentment, know exactly what caused it, know exactly how to move forward and be free of it. It doesn't need to slow you down. That's it. It can be just like that. So have fun with this, play with this, drop a note in the Facebook group. Let me know what resonates for you from this episode. Reach out for support if you'd like to get even more access to me beyond these episodes. And otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode or in a Facebook group near you. Thank you for tuning in. Mwah.